Good morning, everyone. I'm James Shore, and this is the Art of Agile Development Book Club. Today, we are discussing stakeholder trust, which is essential for successful software development. No matter how good you are at delivering software, if you don't have the trust of your stakeholders, you'll struggle to build the right thing and have it accepted. I'm going to get things started by reading an excerpt from the Art of Agile Development. As a reminder, once again, the book is available. It's out in both ebook and print editions, and you can get it from Amazon by visiting jamesshore.com/s/buy-AOAD2. And you can find excerpts and bonus material by visiting jamesshore.com/s/AOAD2. Stakeholder trust. We work with our stakeholders effectively and without fear. I know somebody who worked in a company with two development teams. One was agile, met its commitments, and delivered regularly. The team next door struggled. It fell behind schedule and didn't have any working software to show. Yet, when the company downsized, they let the agile team go rather than the other team. Why? Well, when management looked in on the struggling team, they saw formal diagrams papering the walls and programmers working long hours. When they looked in on the agile team, they saw people talking, laughing, and going home at 5 with nothing but rough sketches and charts on the whiteboards. Like it or not, your team doesn't exist in a vacuum. Agile can seem strange and different at first. Are they really working? Outsiders wonder. It's noisy and confusing. I don't want to work that way. If it succeeds, will they force me to do it too? Ironically, the more successful Agile is, the more those worries grow. Alistair Coburn calls them organizational antibodies. He credits Ron Holiday with the term. If left unchecked, organizational antibodies will overcome and dismantle an otherwise successful Agile team. No matter how effective you are at delivering software, you're in trouble without the goodwill of your stakeholders and sponsor. Yes, delivering software and meeting technical expectations help, but the interpersonal skills your team exhibits may be just as important to building trust in your team. Does this sound unfair or illogical? Surely your ability to deliver high-quality software is all that really matters. It is unfair. It is illogical, but it's also the way people think. If your stakeholders don't trust you, they won't collaborate with your team, which hurts your ability to deliver valuable software. They might even campaign against you. Don't wait for your stakeholders to realize how your work can help them. Show them. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our first topic. What are some examples of high trust between stakeholders and development teams that you've seen or can imagine? And what about the alternative of low trust? What have you seen out there? There were some good examples in the Discord. And just as a reminder, if you're not on the Discord, you can join it by going to jamesshore.com/s/AOAD2 Discord. So there were some good and sometimes depressing examples of high trust and low trust environments on the Discord. Jay Bazuzzi had a couple. He's talking about, let's start with a high trust one because it's a little more positive. He said that he joined a team that was very deliberate about investing in tests and good architecture, and they were able to ship features quickly with high quality consistently. The organization wanted to create a new way to process payments. And from a tech perspective, that should have gone from another team. But because the team had such a good reputation, this one was asked to take it on. So there's an example of a high trust organization. Unfortunately, he went on to say, this broke the team. Part of our success came from working in small increments, and the organization wasn't able to operate that way around this feature. Also, there was so much attention from high-level folks in the org that the team felt pressure, which led to dropping the technical disciplines that have been so important in building that reputation. So most of the team ended up leaving. So sort of a bittersweet story there. I have definitely seen that myself, where pressure can break a team. When I'm talking to people about how to adopt Agile for the first time, I always suggest that they choose something or move from what they call Agile to real Agile. I always suggest that they choose something that's important, valuable, but not critical, because if there's a lot of pressure around the organization, around the team, it's very difficult to learn. We had a lot more examples of low trust organizations than high trust organizations, which is unfortunate, but matches my experience as well. Just a lot of people in environments where trust has been broken between product and engineering, or engineering and their stakeholders. Eleonora Della Bernardina wrote, for me, an example of low trust is people coming to your desk with a to-do list asking, when will it be ready? Another example of low trust is, for me, is people talking about how many story points did you deliver last sprint, because they're focusing more on the busyness of the team, much more than the value. A good example of trust is people coming to the team with their problems and they share them with the team, trying to understand and work together to create the best solution. And that's what I've seen in high trust organizations as well. So once again, I'm hoping to get your participation and feedback. If you can turn on your camera, it works better on the video. If not, that's fine too. I'd like to go ahead and invite Mahesh on up to share his thoughts. Mahesh, welcome.
Hi, James, and hi, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, based on where you're located. This is my first meeting, James, and the reason I joined this meeting is I stumbled upon your one of your article along with Martin's interview, and that's what led me to join this meeting. I was a bit curious, wanted to join and see what exactly happens in this meeting, and I'm hopeful that this meeting is going to be extremely beneficial for you. All right, so coming back to high trust and low trust. Firstly, I'll talk about the low trust. What I've seen. What I've seen is, between product management and engineering, product management are always, want to complete the user stories. They want to get out of the door, deliver the product and be done with it, right? So today, product management user stories are not just, developing and delivering the user story, but also they have to own end to end in terms of operations as well, wherever they deploy it. I mean, it could be in the cloud. So, for example, if you're working on a feature and payment, it's not that you just develop the payment and dump it on the prod and say, we're done with that. You also have to be responsible for availability, fault tolerance, and everything in terms of driving the product success and the customer success, which unfortunately we don't see that happen. So that leads to a lot of low trust because there is constant struggle and fight between the product management and the engineering. For product management, they don't really care a lot about technical depth and a lot of other important things from the engineering side, but rather they are more focused on delivering what might be important from product and customer standpoint, right? So stakeholder trust is extremely important, and the way I've seen that to happen or gain is, firstly, we got to be very, very aligned with the stakeholder in terms of the vision goals that we're going to be laying out. And we constantly have to keep them engaged and also show them the real value that what we're trying to build and deliver. And not just that, we always have to go one step ahead to show them, what are those additional values that we could, provide them, right? So that's very, very important. The moment stakeholders start feeling that there is, this team is not really delivering what is supposed to be coming out from the team. That's when the trust starts to break down. The constant engagement, collaboration would help getting the stakeholder trust, and it's extremely important. And the low trust, like I said, constant struggle between the product management and engineering, which needs to be addressed, leads to low trust a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I certainly see the same thing, particularly around the technical debt that you're talking about, where there's always this struggle. And unfortunately, what I see in a lot of organizations is an environment in which the engineers are not trusted to make sort of basic decisions about how to do their work. For example, can we refactor? Now, I think some of this comes from engineering. This is not a question you should be asking of your product team. They will never answer, oh yeah, I think that's a good idea, unless you go through a lot of work to really phrase it as why this needs to be done. We had Martin Fowler on several weeks ago, and the recording is up on YouTube and on my website now. And one of the points that he made was, of course, refactoring should be done in such small pieces that it doesn't make sense to ask. It's just something you're doing all the time. But I do see in low trust environments this fear from product that, oh, they're refactoring, which really means the team is just wasting time. There was a great post on the Discord just right before we started. Thomas Owens shared a Twitter thread from John Cutler about trust, sharing just a little trust equation. And I thought this was so apt. It says trust equals credibility plus reliability plus empathy, and all of that divided by apparent self-interest. And the source for this is Larry Maccherone. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. It says credibility is how well you actually know what you're talking about. Reliability, how often and quickly you do what you say. And empathy, how much you share that you care about someone else's interests. And I think that a lot of engineering teams, I mean, honestly, yes, there is a problem, a breakdown of trust between product and engineering, and I see it in almost every company. But just for a little tough love here, I think this comes more from engineering than it comes from product. Because if you look at that equation, which really rings true to me, I think that we fail in two areas. I think we have lots of credibility in terms of engineering decisions. But how often and quickly do you do what we say? A lot of engineering teams are very unpredictable. There's this whole no estimates movement. Excuse me. There's this whole no estimates movement, which I understand the reasoning behind that. But what it comes across to our stakeholders is, no, we're not going to tell you anything that you care about. You really want to know when this is going to be done so you can continue on with your lives and get the value out of it. And you're telling me you're not even going to try to answer that. And then when we do answer the question of when will it be done, we often get it wrong. And of course, there's good engineering reasons for that, but that doesn't make us seem reliable. Similarly, empathy, how much do you show that you care about someone else's interests? I see a lot of engineering teams that are even openly disdainful to their stakeholder interests. They're much more interested in the technology or the perks or the salary or the next job that they're going to move to, or at least that's how they come across to their stakeholders. That's how stakeholders see it. Some of that, I think, is because there's a gap between stakeholders and engineers. They don't talk to each other a lot. It's hard to form empathy. It's easy to assume the worst in that environment. But I think on the reliability and empathy side, a lot of engineering teams have dropped the ball on this. And that is the source of this broken trust. And that leads to a lot of problems. And Michael has some comments. Michael, welcome.
Just, I was thinking about what you said about when it will be done. And I think it exactly is the manifestation of low trust. And the worst thing you can do as the engineering team is to actually attempt to answer that question rather than work on the issue of underlying trust. Mm-hmm. And I think it's actually, you have to read in between the lines, and it says, I don't care when it will be done, but I do care about you haven't released anything in a long time. So rather than when it will be done, it's more like when you will release anything I would care about, and therefore make me trust you, right? That you do something important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's rather than trying to say, oh, it will be done then and then. It's rather better to say, okay, so now we are here, and this is what we have. This is maybe what we can release today, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really interesting point that because, of course, there is this chicken and egg problem. You're saying that wanting to know when it's going to be done is a reflection of low trust, but one of the most powerful ways of building trust is to reliably deliver. And this idea that it's more important that you just consistently deliver rather than be really predictable to help build trust. That's an interesting idea. The approach I've taken for building trust has always been about using iterations and delivering on that iteration cadence. So we're going to deliver into this week and next week and next week and next week. And I've always thought that was part of the what I was doing there was being reliable in terms of we're going to deliver every week. But maybe what makes that work, or part of what makes that work, is just the fact that we are delivering frequently.
Yes.
And maybe it would work just as well as in a continuous
And
flow
it
environment.
engages the stakeholder, so therefore they feel they're part of the show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, if I recall correctly from previous conversations, Michael, you're a stakeholder. You're in the product side in your organization. Is that correct?
Yes, as a matter of fact, yes.
Yeah. So what do you want from your engineering teams in order to feel like they're trustworthy?
Yeah, I would say it's exactly this, like release early, release often, and maybe have a little bit more ability to direct where it is going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And not having to feel like I'm always on inspection.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's happening. I'm saying that is the thing that really works against the trust.
I'm working with a company, or worked with a company earlier this year, where they've got a pretty bad eroded trust. And that's something that they're doing with their product owners, is they're basically having product owners act as QA for the team. And they're not shipping software. They're not delivering software that's working the first time. And
exactly, that's one huge, that's one way how to drive the trust to hell, is to make your product people feel like they're QA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that comes back to reliability again. If you say that this is done and you hand it off, and then there's just obvious glaring mistakes, that's certainly not going to feel reliable. Michael, thank you very much for your comments. Again, to participate, raise your hand in Zoom. Please show your video if possible. It works a lot better on the final recording. David, I'd like to, Abdul, welcome.
Hi, thank you. So this lack of trust I've seen in a few organizations, and when I got into a leadership position, or probably even before then, I think you touched on this, the idea that what is the responsibility of engineering in this entire thing. And we've touched on a few of these things already, but just to reiterate where I've had success. One was delivering quality work. So building in quality became really, really important. So it's no use. Like, engineering teams get to become untrusted because we can't deliver, or we continue fixing bugs, or we delivering software that's shoddy. And all of that just leads to a breakdown. Like the business stops trusting engineering. So the responsibility of engineering, one of the responsibilities is, how can we build better software? So I took the time with my teams to run workshops on building quality in. So whether it's TDD, whether it's upfront design, or some upfront design anyway, understanding the problem. It was talking to stakeholders. So you touched on the empathy part. So go and talk directly to the stakeholders, understand their problems, and then come back. And just in those two instances, TDD and talk to stakeholders, we saw a huge improvement already in terms of what we were delivering. So the software was working better, but what we were delivering was also the right thing. We had better understanding of the problem. So I think those played a huge role. Then the other part that I found very, very useful was a weekly demo day of what we had accomplished. So this idea of we want to deliver on a regular cadence, or count story points or estimates, is something I pushed back on. I said, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is try to break down the work and then show you our progress. So the demo days also, I said to my team, this is not something you prepare for. Show what you've got in the raw state it's in. So I don't want you to spend 2 days or 1 day or half a day or whatever it is preparing for a demo day, for a formal demo. It is invite people, record the thing, show them what progress you've made on the problem, and let them ask questions, those kinds of things. So it was more a case of every week we were seeing progress. It might not have been the progress as much as you wanted, but we had an opportunity to get feedback, go in the right direction. We didn't want to estimate. And the reason I don't like estimates is, or even saying that something will be done at a particular cadence, is when I think of the triangle of quality, scope, and time, if we're fixing the scope and we're fixing the time, the quality is going to suffer. And I wanted to detangle that. I wanted to say, can we detangle time or scope? And we maintain the quality. And the really important part there that I saw is that as the quality of the output improved, we started dropping technical debt. We started reducing the number of bugs. We started freeing up time for doing better work. And we started just everybody on the team feeling better, and the trust levels then increased. But a bit of time, but those things did work. So that was my experience.
That's a great story. Thank you. And it really ties in with what Michael was saying, that it's not really about the delivering on time, but it's just delivering frequently, showing that you're making that progress with the demos. Yeah. There is a vicious, thank you very much, Abdul. There's this vicious cycle that I see in organizations where they have a low internal quality, poor feedback loops, and that leads to low performance and defects, and that decreases trust. But that lack of trust causes stakeholders to tighten up on micromanaging the schedule. And of course, product folks don't ever think about internal quality when they're thinking about what to plan for. So they push for features, and that leaves even less time for internal quality and good feedback loops, which creates more defects, and it creates this terrible vicious cycle. But the good news is, just like Abdul was talking about, if you can break that cycle, if you can focus on quality, if you can focus on improving your feedback loops, it starts running in reverse. Your quality goes up, your stakeholder trust goes up, your ability to spend more time on quality goes up, and it can unravel or re-ravel, get better in a really nice self-reinforcing loop. David has some thoughts. Again, to join the conversation, just raise your hand in Zoom. And David, welcome to the show.
Cool. Thanks, James. I think it's mostly been said, but I didn't want to bob my hand up and down too many times. But back in 2012, the only thing it said on our business card was working software weekly. That was like the most important thing to me. It was just, it was a little bit playing on the Winamp thing, where there was that version of Winamp where its tagline was, "It actually works." Somehow software that works became something that people didn't expect, and being able to have something that worked and just ship it and show someone something working, and put the constraint on ourselves that we have to show something working every week. It's like, oh, well, then we have to take smaller steps. And that really built a lot of trust. And when you were talking about those feedback loops, there's this framework, I can't pronounce his name properly, but Bongay, that Melissa Perry refers to in the knowledge gaps. And there's this idea that the organization wants to know when it will be done. So they ask, and then they ask more urgently, and then they force people to effectively lie, right? Mm-hmm. And then we lie to them, and then we don't trust them because we've been forced to effectively give an answer that we don't have. Or we're asked exactly what the product strategy is for the next year, so we can put it somewhere, and we're forced to lie, and then it goes wrong and people are surprised. And it's almost like, how do you recognize that there's this knowledge gap between what management wants to know and what the organization actually does or can know? It's really interesting to almost be able to say, we can't know that. I can't tell you how long it'll take, but what I can tell you is this is how long something else took. And that's difficult with the power structures being upside down in many organizations. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more than that. So I have a friend who's a mechanical engineer, and what he does, so they do HVAC systems for sophisticated environments, like, for example, Intel fabs. He's here in Portland with me, and of course, we have a big Intel presence here. He was telling me a story about they tried to hire a contractor to do some automation, some Excel stuff for them. And he was really upset that contractor couldn't tell him when the work was going to be done. And to him, it was sort of a basic, table stakes. How is it that you can't do this? I said, well, that's just the way the software is. And he's like, no, that is wrong. You cannot operate in that way. That is just not an appropriate way to operate. Now, he's an estimator for this company. So, doing predictions and doing fixed price bids is all he does. But it was just astounding to him that, and really unacceptable. Like, this caused him some serious anger just hearing me talk about this. It was completely unacceptable to him that could be the answer. And yet, as you're saying, David, it's the reality. And so what do you do about that? Do you have a way of addressing this sort of fundamental mismatch between expectations around long-term? I think we can, deliver in the short term, as people have been talking about, but long-term predictions and being able to meet those predictions successfully, and people's expectation that we be able to do that even when we can't.
Yeah, from my side, I've been quite stubborn and lucky. Like, I run a small agency in Cape Town, South Africa, and we're small enough we can ride the waves, and I can have an anti-sales process where I say, oh, well, I can't tell you. So if you need to know that, we can't work for you. It's meant we've worked for a lot of startups who value discovery rather than long-term guarantees, and we don't work for banks and governments and people like that. And generally, everyone's lives has been better for us for that. But, it means we haven't made life better inside the banks or the governments. So it's a bit of a trade-off. But I think building a confidence that you can say you can't know and trust in others that actually that's the truth. Like, we can't know. And it's the responsible thing to say we can't know and say that with certainty. You could say, look, I can tell you ranges, and I can tell you certain things. I can point to other examples. And the one thing that I've come to say is actually a trap to pretend I know. So if I lay out a backlog for you at the start of this year, and we say that's where we'll get at the end, and then in 2 months we realize the thing we did in the beginning was not optimal, now I'm in a trap. Either I aim for the goal we set, or we have to now unwind a bunch of implicit assumptions about that's our contract, that's where we have to get, either explicit or implicitly, that's where we were going to get by December. So now we're disappointing ourselves that we're not going to get there, whereas it's the most important thing to do, to start with the highest priority item and go and improve that. But we get stuck not being able to do that. So I say it's actually a trap for us to lay out anything more. Let's lay out this next point and then put some options. And that we use sort of, here's future options we could explore, but we acknowledge if we're building Google, the most important thing is the search box. If that's not working, the user login thing doesn't matter. So let's go back and make sure that that's there and be able to, I call it iteration design. At the end of each thing we've done, we review it, and then we find the thing that sucks the most, and we agree that's what we should fix. Is that an operational bottleneck? Is that a user failure? Is it a thing? That's what we do next. And we kind of review together, slightly lockstep with a bit of usability to make sure we're surfacing things. But that's kind of how I like to operate in general, like find the sore spot and go there next. It does take trust and faith, right? And pixie dust. So how do you get that? That's,
Yeah. But thank you. I think you sort of said how you get that. You establish that as an expectation in the beginning, and that's how I approach it too. I think you and I are both fortunate in that people come to us, or and say we want to work this, we want to do this thing, and then you say, well, here's the conditions. And that's the same thing I do in a different environment. I'm not building software for people. I'm helping them learn how to build software. But when they come to me and say, we want to be more agile, or we want to have fewer defects, or we want to be able to take more frequent, smaller bets, I say, well, one of the conditions for this is working in an adaptive way, and this is what it looks like, and is that going to be okay for you? And when the answer is no, I say, well, then it's not going to work. Sorry. But people often don't say no, but it is important to set those ground rules, that sort of ground truth, I think, from the beginning. David, thanks very much for your comments. Harold, I'm going to invite Harold up in a moment. Before I do that, though, again, to participate in the conversation, just raise your hand in Zoom. And I want to queue up our next discussion prompt as Harold's sharing his thoughts, which is, we talked about stakeholder demos a little bit. I'd like to hear what you think about what you've seen as good ways of approaching stakeholder demos. But first, Harold, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Welcome.
Oh, I really love the equation. That was really helpful. Credibility, reliability, empathy over self-interest. And I wanted to comment a little bit about the empathy thing, but David, I raised my hand because I really love what David said about estimates. The no estimates movement and Woody Zuhl, I think what I've heard when I've dived into that was largely about the conversation, because it wasn't a conversation people were allowing. And it seems all about real honesty. I mean, being really clear and honest before you make a commitment and not lying. And unfortunately, most of my experience of estimates has been, basically a lie.
To be fair, though, I think that lie is done in good faith, right?
Oh, yeah, true.
The engineer, product folks often push for an estimate, and engineers, I've noticed, tend to be people pleasers, even if that means they're saying yes to something that they don't really believe in, or trying to accomplish something that they don't really believe in. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, no, but wait, they're called estimates, right? So I remember being asked for estimates. I'm like, okay, well, everyone's given estimates all the time before me, and so I'm going to give estimates, and they're never true. And then they're not true again. Maybe I just need to try higher. That's what we got raised in, and this just having the depth to understand from all the experience that a lot of the work that we do isn't going to work that way. But so when I had this conversation with Izul, when I got to this place where, there are places maybe where estimates might actually work. For example, when you've done it enough and you understand it. Then he said, that's more like scheduling, right? So there's some kind of software work that is a little bit more like scheduling, but largely those kinds of things probably will get automated or should be automated. The interesting thing in software work is usually the discovery part, not the stuff that you do over and over and over and over again. It's like, we're not carving, we're not carving widgets. But the thing about, just to move to the empathy thing, but when we talk about T-shaped developers, and this is like the engineering thing and the specialty, a lot of what I believe that the top part of the T is about empathy, because I've been in these organizations since the beginning when I was working at Xerox, and oh my goodness, the engineers had no empathy for the salespeople. I hated sales, I hated marketing, didn't believe the executives, the leadership. And so when I got to coach in an agile transformation, I saw it was astounding. I felt like in a few days, I understood the organization better than any of them did, because they were all doing these these stories that had they weren't talking or they weren't connecting. And it was the leadership believed it was their fault. They were taking advantage of them. And the people on the below, they could see things that the leadership just wasn't processing or seeing. So developing enough understanding of what everyone does so that you can at least understand them, even if you can't do it, I believe it's really critical. And one thing I think is really helpful for that is open space. Just kind of getting the system in the room and letting them talk about what they care about and noticing. You're going to get a really quick read as a consultant or a coach about what the heck is going on, and help them build that empathy. And because they're never going to trust, even if they think they're credible. If there's no empathy, there's no space for common language even.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When somebody doesn't have empathy for you, you can tell. When they don't care about your concerns, you can tell. And that means, but they don't care about me. Why should I care about them? And if they don't care about me, they're not going to care about the things I care about. So why should I trust them? You'd also talked about forecasting, and I just want to call out that on June 3rd, we are going to be having a session on forecasting and roadmaps. Specifically, Todd Little will be joining us for that conversation, and he's the basis for the forecasting and roadmap material in the book. So mark your calendars for that. Again, to participate, thanks very much, Harold. Again, to participate, just raise your hand in Zoom. Please turn on your video if you can. And Goran, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. Actually, you steal my thunder. I want to talk about more difference between forecast and estimating. Estimation. So what I found that estimation is black and white. Either you have it, or you reach it, or you don't. Versus when we do forecasting, especially when I know it sounds a little bit technical, but using Monte Carlo. then we can have a slightly different discussion and start building this trust, because here is our performance from the last period, month, or whatever, and here is how it looks like, and it's not black and white. It's a probability. The life is rarely black and white. It's a probability, and where is this threshold? And then there is a potential to have a good discussion about this one. I don't know, there is a 75% chance that we can finish these user stories by the time you want. Yes, are you confident with this 25 remaining? Because it may not have. Is there anything that we can do slightly different? And then it kind of involve both sides in this kind of a discussion, because it's not only engineering, it should be both, also in product. I've been in the companies when product has to, because they have a hard deadline, has to cut the scope in half and screaming bloody murder. But then the half in it's a half, and then we deliver it and realize, oh my God, it doesn't work. And said, okay, so here it is. Either you can move your date and then spend twice as money. So it's kind of also to enable feedback loop and this kind of discussions. So forecast, change a little bit discussion to build this trust. That's my view of this one.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring that up. So, of course, I'm completely on board with a probabilistic approach to forecasting. And we'll be talking about that some more on June 3rd. But I want to sort of get at the trust angle of this, because what I found, and I'd love to hear if your experience is different, what I found is that your typical stakeholder doesn't like to hear probabilistic forecasts. In fact, really has trouble understanding it. And it's not something that builds trust. I think it's something that I've used this environments. I have this story, which I won't go into. It's a great story, though, about a company that had such low trust around the board that when I did the initial interview with them and asked, what's going on here, every engineer told me everything would be fixed here if you just fired that person. But they pointed at each other in a loop. Like this person pointed at that person, who pointed at that person, who pointed at this person. They were all pointing at each other. And we put in XP, extreme programming, and over the course of quite a while, a year, it got to the point where there was a really high trust environment. And over the next year after that, got into a high trust environment with their product. And at that point, they could start hearing probabilistic estimates. But before that, just they couldn't hear it. So is your experience the same, or is it different?
It's similar. It's not easy to go, especially if there is a history of, this is how we use, we've been working for years or whatever. And then also, it's not easy. I heard, that there is, Monte Carlo. No, it's a Monte Carlo. I don't believe in that one. We don't have to do, you have to work harder. So that's why I said there is a potential to have a slightly different discussion. Does it happen always? No. Mm-hmm. Did it happen in some teams with some product managers? Yes. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I found it's that's what I said. There is a potential.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. David, welcome back.
Sure. I was just a quick reflection on the formula. So where a lot of folks focus is on empathy, right? And we get the whole huggy-feely agile coach reputation for that. And then credibility is definitely there because we've hired, right? You pointed to reliability, which I think is really interesting. And reliability is something that maybe we don't think about. It's like, it's hard to estimate, so we're not going to do it. It's hard to plan the future, so we're not going to do it. And one of the things you asked about stakeholder demos, for me, that is a bit of almost like it's a bit of a silver bullet, is BDD scenarios. Using a given when-then to set an expectation up front that this is how the thing is going to behave. And then when we sit down in a stakeholder session and we're like, look, it behaves the way we said it was going to behave. Suddenly it builds this sense of reliability and predictability. Mm. And it also builds amazing, fluent communication. Oh, they heard me. They understood me. So in terms of a thing that has helped at stakeholder demos for trust, that's been a big one for me, over the last while.
We're almost out of time, but I want to dig into this just a little bit more, if you don't mind. I was heavily involved with Fit, which is one of the earliest customer acceptance tools. And thanks. And the problem I saw with it is that the customer representative, the product people really didn't want to be going into the level of detail. It was too much for them. And so when we showed them the Fit documents with everything passing, one thing I heard from one of the companies I was working with is, well, how do we know that this is real? How do we know you didn't just color it all green and say it's working? Which obviously was a huge reflection of complete lack of trust. So although I love the idea that you're saying, I haven't seen it play out myself because the customers didn't want to be creating the scenarios. So how does that play out for you?
So this is where I think BDD, for me, paints itself into an awkward corner because of automation. BDD is not the automation part for me in its entirety. Yes, that's part of it, but if we jump straight to there, we miss the value, right? So if we're like, this is the high level scenario that we can talk in the first conversation with the client, given the driver arrives at the store, when they load the way bill, then they're like ready to depart. And we sort of hierarchically have that one there, and everyone knows that's part of that, and that's there. And when we illustrate, we'll show the green test, but we'll also show the same scenario through the UI. And we'll show the same scenario in the events, but we use that scenario almost as a script for everything. So that's like a common language. I completely agree. Showing someone a passing test suite, the only person who cares about that is really the developer.
Yeah.
Right. But then when you know that's passing, and you can use the same script and be like, okay, let's go through that slowly now and show you how it works. And do we want to model a new scenario? You mean when the driver arrives more than 15 minutes after the thing has been created, he should be seeing this? Okay, cool. Let's write that. And then when we get into the real nuts and bolts, that's sort of for us. But the process of writing those scenarios and not automating them, well, you can automate them at that high level, but they're kind of that useless test, right? They've got too much in them, but they're useful as sort of aid memoirs of the structure of the system.
Yeah, that matches my experience too, which is that the conversation is more important than the actual automation or the tool itself. Thanks. Thank you very much, David. And thank you all for participating. That is all the time we have today. This has been a great conversation. I can't wait to put it up on YouTube and share it with the world, because I think this has been a really useful and valuable conversation. Lots of good insights. Next Friday, Kelsey Hightower is joining us. We're going to be discussing continuous integration and deployment. Kelsey is a well-known speaker on cloud computing topics, and this is a particularly great topic. So I'm really looking forward to it. Free reading is up now at jamesshore.com/s/AOAD2 book club. You can join the Discord conversation by visiting jamesshore.com/s/AOAD2 Discord. That is it for today. Thanks for joining, everybody, and I will see you next week.